candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with AVAG Beck's podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our discussion today. I have the pleasure of having Edoardo Guidali with us. Edoardo is a communication specialist. So he helps families with discord have a conversation where everybody's heard. And he also works with couples as well. And most of us have family members that may not be great with accountability, or we may attempt to have those conversations that end up imploding. And it can be difficult. It can cause a lot of strain. So we are going to learn a few things from Edoardo today. And given his expertise, we can actually reach out to him if there's something to salvage in a family relationship. So listen, you will learn a few things. I know I'm looking forward to learning a few things today. Edoardo, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for the nice introduction. I'm doing very fine, thank you. And I'm really excited for this conversation.
Me too. So I know we talked a little earlier about what got you interested in being a communication specialist. Can you share with our audience and our listening audience what really was the thing that piqued your interest in helping families understand each other or have meaningful conversations?
Well, it was very simple. I was having lots of problems with my own family, and I didn't have a clue how to solve them. And this went on for years and years. We came to a point in which we were just being polite to each other to maintain balance, which is something that I see constantly in other families and in other relationships. But we never solved our problems to the root. So in one very difficult moment of our life, when my grandfather was in the hospital, all these problems surfaced even stronger. And I found myself having the crazy idea of sitting at the table, all of us, to discuss our problems and to find solutions, because I decided that things couldn't go on the way that they were. So I found myself being the moderator of this family meeting, or as I like to call them, family reunions. And I noticed how we make so many assumptions about each other and how so little understanding we actually have about each other's, about our problems. And so I started finding solutions. I started making other people in my family seeing my perspective or the perspective of some other family members. And I was astonished to see how things improved very quickly. And I'm not saying it from the perspective of someone who had little problems. As a family, we had very big problems. We didn't get along very well, and it was difficult sometimes being in a room together. We didn't go on vacation together. So I was really surprised, and I actually really enjoyed doing this. So I started thinking about the idea of doing this for other families. Because I kept seeing so many other families, so many other relationships completely blocked because they couldn't have healthy conversations as the ones that I started having with my own families. And I gave it a try. I created my own company in 2024. And from then I dedicated my life helping other families and couples really break the ice and to have these difficult conversations in a healthy way. And it has been amazing since then.
Great. So, like in the example of your family, and you called it a family reunion, how often did you have these meetings, and how many meetings did it take for everybody to, step out of their egos to really listen to everybody, because you have the human ego to contend with, right? Where we suck at listening to one another, and we suck at seeing things from the other person's perspective, because we want to express our own perspective, right? How long was that process with your experience with your family, to get to a point where everybody was able to listen to one another and how they affect one another?
Well, the whole process lasted for some months. We scheduled these reunions once a week, and
Okay.
there is also logic behind that that I'm going to explain a little bit later. But it didn't actually take us long to get to a comfortable point. I would say around a month, because it's all about overcoming those fears that we have, especially the fear of abandonment. And as you mentioned, we are very bad at listening to one another. So as soon as we start listening, another world completely opens up to you. So it's all about changing those bad habits, those bad communication habits that we had, interrupting each other's, not listening to each other's, the fears that we had surrounding certain topics. To come on, our reunions usually lasted for 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours. And we did this for several months in the end, because we found it very beneficial. And even if after the first month, I would say that most of the big issues got resolved, we kept doing it as a habit, because communication, the way that I see it, is more of a muscle. If you don't train it, you lose it. So you always want to keep that training going on. But yeah, I would say that for my family and for most families, it doesn't have to take years like you would expect, even if the problems are very big, because at the root, there are some very bad communication habits and very strong fears. But once you find a way to remove them, things start flowing, and you can actually get things better very quickly.
So I like how you talked about the commitment aspect of things, because everybody has to be committed for the process or to the process. So what were the workarounds, or if any, if this happened in your experience so far, of certain people not being committed to dedicating that time to have the conversation? How effective was that, or how non-effective was that process? Was there an interruption to the process of healing? If you have somebody who's popping in and out or not really showing up, in a sense.
So commitment is very important in this process. And what I encourage all the people that I work with is to really commit for the first month and a half, to make one appointment per week, a couple of hours, ideally, if you don't have the time, 1 hour, but to really keep that commitment, because it's really crucial, because you're doing something that usually is very uncomfortable for you, and it's very easy to fall back into all the habits. So you wanted to really ride the wave. It's really important in the beginning that you're really consistent and committed. That doesn't mean that if you skip 1 or 2 weeks and then your commitment is back, things cannot get better. But the point is that you are learning a new skill, and especially in the beginning, you want to keep training it as much as possible, so that in the long term you're not going to lose it. So yes, if in the beginning you come to me for a couple of weeks and then you break it for a month or so, it's very easy to go back right away to the way things were. And it's very easy to not get the benefits and to not get the low-hanging fruits of communication. But this shouldn't scare people, in my opinion, because yes, you need commitment, but you also have lots to looking forward to. Because my philosophy is that I teach you communication so that you, as a family, as a couple, you become independent and you don't have to keep coming to me. And usually this happens in around 1.5 to 3 months maximum. So yes, you need to keep a commitment in the beginning, and I strongly encourage it. But it's also not a commitment that it's going to last for years. So I think in a way, from a psychological point of view, it's also easier for prospective clients to take this commitment and to keep it until the end.
Right. So that in a sense of a couple, I see that even if there's a break, but in terms of a group setting where like a large family, like you mentioned, the example of your family, where week after week, the group is working on a different communication style, working to address a different problem or working to understand something better from another person's perspective. And one person particularly misses 2 weeks in a row, 3 weeks in a row. And when they show up with the same mindset that they left with, as opposed to catching up, right, where everybody is. Can that derail the process a little bit? Or do you set aside time to have this person kind of like oriented to where everybody is before we move forward? Or is there a need for that? Because if somebody hasn't participated in maybe a few weeks of session where everybody's discussing something difficult and getting to the bottom of it and having some sort of resolution, and they come back in with that intention and that energy of what that problem was prior, right? Could that derail the conversation? Or, do you set aside time for that person to understand where everybody is if it seems like they're still coming in with that prior energy?
That can happen. The way that I would address a case like that is to use the whole family group to update the family member who has been missing. So at the beginning of the session, the family member who has missed a couple of sessions is lacking of the information, what happened for the past time, for the past few times, how far did you go? So I would ask the family members who were there to update the person. And of course, I would like to know the opinion of this person about what has been discussed. So it's really important that the person who has missed some session is updated. I think it's possible to do that very quickly in about half an hour. And what I would do is then focus a bit more on that family member. The way that I do it is that I ask people to bring up some subjects, some topics that have caused conflicts in the past. So in this case, I would make this person the protagonist of this session so that I can see where this person is lacking, what should be improved in a way that it is aligned with the other family members. It's not going to derail the progress of the whole family because I'm there and I'm making sure that this person is up to date and that he has received enough training and enough information as the rest of the family members. So I wouldn't worry about that. It can happen. It can happen that someone has work obligations or that someone is sick. It's not the end of the world.
Right. Okay. Beautiful. So in your experience so far, what is the one, for lack of a better word, hurt that you have come across where it's difficult for people to let go? So what is the one thing that you see is like the biggest, the only word is coming to my mind is hurt, either within a family dynamic or within a couple dynamic that sometimes has a longer process of addressing and communicating better?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, I believe that so many problems in a family, in families and couples, they stem from the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection. And sometimes this fear can be magnified, can be very, very strong, and it can make us behave in a way that is not conducive to having healthy communications. To make people understand how these work, I always make the example families of doctors or of lawyers. Many times, people who grow up in these kind of family settings are expected to become doctors and lawyers. And there is a lot of pressure. And the point is that the son or the daughter, if they want to be something else, then they are conflicted because they are afraid that they are going to disappoint their whole family, and in a way they are going to feel rejected because there are a lot of expectations around them. So the point is that these fears are very common in families. They are very common in couples. So, for example, what's going to happen if I'm going to be my true self with my wife, with my husband? What if they are going to see this side of me that I've never shown them, that I've been ashamed of? Will they still love me? So this is a huge psychological barrier that people have because more often than not, we live in a world in which love is not unconditional. Even if we hear it all the time, we should love ourselves unconditionally. We should bring up our kids and love them unconditionally. But the truth is that many times love is conditional. Love is conditional on the fact that you get good grades, that you excel in sports, that you choose a career path like the one of your parents, that you earn a certain amount of money, that you are in the same society circle that I am in, And many times this leads to problems in relationships and in families, because a father should love their kids independently of what they are going to do, because it's their kids. And, many times we get all these fears and these insecurities from our own parents, and they got them from their own parents. So it's a vicious cycle, it's a generational pattern that we want to break. So this is one of the most difficult fears to address, and I have several ways to do them. But once you get through this fear of abandonment and rejection, which is most of the times something that is in your head, once you get through with that, communication becomes effortless. The reason why I see that most of the times this fear is just an assumption that we have in our head is because when we are in presence of a husband, partner, wife that truly loves us, if they truly love us, they will accept ourselves for who we are, independently of what we choose, independently of what we do. And so it's in your best opinion to really be authentic, because if you're authentic and that person doesn't want to be with you anymore because, you don't want anymore to be a successful lawyer and make a lot of money, and instead you wanted to be a teacher, that's a suggestion for you that person is not right for you.
Right.
So the fear of abandonment is the biggest issue to tackle.
So, if this is not just an irrational fear, and it is actually an actualized abandonment and rejection because a person in a family setting is quote unquote the black sheep because they dare to be themselves. They dare to step out of expectations, right? And also in a couple relationship, if they dare to pursue their career or their passion, right? And the rejection and abandonment is actually not a fear, it's actualized. How can you bridge that relationship? Because a fear of abandonment and rejection internalized, right? That irrational fear is irrational until it's actualized. It's kind of a fear because a person doesn't want it to happen, right? And, there's a lot of guarding and grieving that goes along with that. And when it actually happens, there's a traumatic response to that, and it's not usually easy for a person to heal from a traumatic response. Even if they heal, they're usually like barriers and safeguards of sort put in place to not have this treatment again or in future relationship or interaction with other people. How is that addressed when that fear is no longer an irrational fear, rather an actualized action and response from people around, family, couple, friends, whatever?
Absolutely. Let me tell you how you can actually go to the root of this problem and solve it. Let's take the case of abandonment from your parents. So you dared to be yourself. You dared to take up a profession that you like, and they reject you. They say, we don't want you to do this, and you feel that you are being abandoned. The point is that, as we talked before, most of these behaviors, they come back to generational patterns. And the fact is that your parents are not actually rejecting you. Your parents experienced the same with their own parents. And so they internalized that own behavior. Let me make an example that has roots in my own personal experience with my family. Me and my sister suffered a lot because we didn't feel loved by our parents. And why is that? It's because they never actually said the magic words. I love you. We are proud of you. We are going to love you no matter what you do. They never said these things. And when we talked to them about these issues, they were shocked because they thought, of course, it's implicit for us that we love you, that we are proud of you, that we're going to love you no matter what you're going to do. When we went deeper to the reason why they never externalized their love for us in this direct way, we found out that their parents did the same with them. And when they were young, it was not really normal in the area where they grew up for the parents to say these things to their children. So, and in a sense, my parents as well were traumatized and they felt rejected by their parents because of this. And they just internalized this behavior unconsciously and did the same with us. But as soon as we brought the topic to the table, as soon as we were able to tell them, look, we are suffering a lot because of this and that, they changed their behavior right away because they understood what was going on. They understood where it came from their own parents, and they adapted their behavior right away. From then on, we always heard our parents say, I love you. They would hug us. They would tell us, no matter what you do, we're always going to be proud of you. My point of view on family is that rejections are never really actual rejections, because in families there is always at the root of the family a very strong love. When you ask a parent, do you deeply, even if it's very, very, very deep, do you deeply love your sons and daughters? They will always say yes. Mm-hmm. What happens is that there are obstacles for that love to get on the surface and to be felt by the children. So in the case of the person who dared to be themselves and felt rejected by their parents, usually it's because those parents have their own personal issues that revolve around being their true authentic selves. So in these cases, when I get these problems with clients, and most of the times it's about these things, the focus shift from the daughter who feels rejected to the parents. So we start investigating, do you feel that you never dared to be yourself? Do you feel that you always wanted to do something different, but you never did? And what stopped you? And in most cases, we would find out that those parents were actually afraid to do what they wanted to do in life. They never did that. And that caused a lot of frustration, and that unfortunately affected the child. So it's all about understanding where things come from. And once you understand that and you go through those emotions in a safe place, in this case, it's all about the parents going through those difficult emotions of never having done something in their life that is aligned with themselves. Once you go through all of those emotions, then you can reconcile the relationship with the daughter, admit, your own mistakes, explaining where they come from, and then you resolve the issue. So when it comes to family, very difficultly you can find an actual rejection.
Okay. So that is in terms of parents. And, parents do love their children deep down, but sometimes they struggle with showing it. And I have seen in lots of situations where siblings are actually the reason why a parent is not able to express, either because of favoritism or just influence, right? One particular sibling or group of siblings have a strong influence on the parents, where the person who dares to be themselves is treated as the odd one out, right? So in a case where you and your sister show the united front and you approach your parents to have this conversation that ended beautifully, and in a case where somebody does not have an ally, right? And there's a strong influence. We can make excuses for parents because, again, generationally, they're different. The way they grew up is different. What they know to be parenting is very different with how they had it now. So it's kind of like if you knew better, you would have done better. But at the same time, there are parents that now they know they do better. And you can't fault anybody from operating from a place of, familiarity or what they knew. It's the changes they make. So in a case where a parent has a strong influence, or a parent have a strong influence from siblings that may have been older, how can a person deal or, resolve that if they were willing to? Just because of ideology, it can be tradition, it can be culture, even religion. I've seen a lot of religion excuses be used. That can cause a lot of friction and brokenness for somebody who may not know how to heal themselves, but for somebody who, again, may not know how to go through that process, heal themselves, because they dare to speak up, they dare to speak out, they dare to be themselves? What should they do?
This is very interesting. Of course, there are many obstacles, as you mentioned, related to religion, traditions, and many times this can be taken as excuses, of course. In the case of someone who desires to be their authentic selves and they find themselves having issues by doing that with their own families, my approach can result very useful to these people. So maybe I should talk a little bit more about my unique approach to communication and how that can help in these kind of situations. So the first thing that you want to do whenever you want to get into a conversation, a significant conversation with your own family, is to prepare them psychologically. So what I suggest to people who wanted to experiment on their own with the communication is that don't go home and try to solve right away all the problems with your family. Rather, make them aware that there are problems that you would like to talk about with them, and choose a date and time in which you can do it. Because for many people, this will be interpreted as something that comes out of the blue. They will be shocked. Are there problems in our family? What's going on? So some people need to prepare themselves psychologically. In the same way that you prepared yourself psychologically to go to your parents and say, look, there are problems, let's pick a date and time to discuss that. So that's very important, because it could be that someone is having a bad day and that's not conducive to healthy communication. And so if you throw at them more problems, it's not going to work. The second thing is, when you start this reunion, this conversation, is that you want to set a positive intention to the conversation. Let me make this clear. Most of the times, when we want to tackle problems with someone in a relationship, in a family, we feel hostility coming from the person who brings this problem. And this is because in our society, we see problems as something very bad. We see conflict as something that shouldn't happen in the first place. Like, we are having some problems in our marriage. That shouldn't be happening. That's a very bad sign. We should not say this to anyone, because otherwise they will say things behind our backs. So our society tells us that having conflicts, having problems is something bad, something to be avoided. So naturally, when someone confronts us with a problem, we feel, in a sense, attacked. We feel, in a sense, in a hostile environment. So setting the intention is extremely important. You want to set a positive intention. You want to say, look, I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to tell you what you did wrong and what I did right. But I recognize that we are having problems, and I would like that we as a team work for the well-being of our relationship and of our family. So this is the first most important step to create a safe place during the meeting, because without having a safe place, you cannot have a healthy conversation. You cannot solve the problem. So you want to approach all of this with a white flag instead of with a gun. Because if you approach it with a white flag, everybody is going to cooperate to solve the problem. If you approach it with a gun, then nothing good is going to come out of it. So you start setting the positive intention. And look, I think that we have problems around this. I know that I always did things in my own way, and that this has caused some issues in the family. I would like to sit down and find a solution and to understand, your point of view and possibly you understand my point of view so that we can really find a solution together. This is the first important step. Then it would be very good to have a moderator if you can. If you are in a big family, to find someone who is mostly impartial. If you are in a relationship and you have a trusted friend, that can be very helpful. And the next thing is, as you stressed before, the importance of listening. You want to talk and you want to have the other person listen to you. And how do you do it? You need to establish one simple rule. Only one person talks at a time, no interruptions. This is extremely important because we are used so much to interrupting each other's, especially when we are in a conflict, especially when we are conflicted. We are used to that as soon as someone says something that we don't like, we jump into the discussion and we say our own opinion. So what I help my clients with is this. I tell them, I understand that what this other person tells you can upset you, but let this other person talk as much as needed, whether it's for 2 minutes, whether it's for 5 minutes, whether it's for 10 minutes. And at the end of it, you will have all the time in the world to say your bit. And this is extremely important because we don't listen enough. And especially there are so many people who don't have such an aggressive communication style. They are a little bit shyer. So when they are given time to talk, for them, it's really amazing because they never had the time, they never had the space to say what they wanted to say. So this is very important. And once you start working in this direction, you are starting to build something, actually, because you are taking all the time that you need to express your point of view, and the person in front of you is learning so many things for the first time about you, because in the past, this conversation could have never happened. You could have never spoken for 10 minutes without the other person interrupting you. So all the information that you wanted to share they were never shared with the other person. So I always say to my clients, when you work in a family, when you work in a relationship, it's like you are making a puzzle together. And you don't have all the pieces in the puzzle. Even if most of the times people think that they do. They really think, I know why this person is behaving in this way. I know why I am the victim of this. But most of the times we do not know because we come from different experiences. We come from different, maybe traumas that other people might not be aware of or that we might not have externalized. So communication plays an extremely important role. So speaking without interruptions is extremely important. And then another very important tool is to shift your perspective, from wanting to be right to wanting to solve problems in your family. I always say this to my clients. You have two choices. You can choose to be right or you can choose to be happy in a family. And it's very important to shift this perspective because when you want to be right, you're not listening to the person in front of you. When you want to be right, everything has already been decided. What the other people did, why they did it, you're not open. So, and anyhow, it's not important to be right in a family. it's not really important. It's important to understand each other, to understand in which way we hurt each other, and to change those behaviors. Because I'm telling you, most of the times, it's not that we really want to hurt each other. If you ask someone in your family, do you actually want to hurt me? Do you actually want to cause me harm? The answer is no, I don't want to cause you harm, but nonetheless, with your actions, with your words, you are hurting me. So we come here to maybe the final step to reach healthy communication. You need to understand that you can unconsciously and unintentionally hurt the people in front of you. And you need to take responsibility for that, because maybe you are just very comfortable talking about a topic that for someone else is very uncomfortable and can cause lots of harm. And you might think to yourself, I have done nothing wrong. I have done nothing wrong. I'm just talking about a topic that I'm comfortable with. If the other person is uncomfortable with it, it's their own problem. But this is not a conversation that you are having with a stranger. This is a conversation that you are having, with your partner, with your father, with your mother. You care about them. So it's very important to understand that we can hurt people unintentionally, and that it's crucial that we recognize it and that we change our own behavior. So I'll make a quick example. There are people who are very sensitive, and yes, of course, you could say it's their problem that they're sensitive. I should speak the way that I like. But if you're hurting your mother, who is very sensitive, with your own words, and she's telling you that because now you are communicating in a healthy way, you don't want to hurt your mother. You are going to find better words to say what you want to say without causing her harm. So coming back to the person who dares to be themselves, these are all very, very good tools that you can use to tackle the problem from another perspective and to make you feel understood in a way that before you couldn't.
Yeah. So we do get fatigued at the end of the day. We're humans. And in a sense where somebody tries and keeps trying to have a conversation, even changing behavior, modifying, showing cooperation, showing outward affection, showing support, but there's usually still that undertone of being, chastised or, called out, even when there is nothing tangible, right? There's always that projection of, well, you did this, or you said this way, or in case of my culture, which is very African and Nigerian, the premise of respect is very big. Or you insulted me when there was nothing, no insult, or there was no disrespect. People do get exhausted over time. And the one thing that I see people do, and they find peace in it, is to disconnect and go no contact. If I continue to be the problem, despite my wanting peace, despite my action for peace, despite me showing up for everybody, despite me showing up the way I should show up, with love, with affection, and communicating and not keeping secrets, even if everybody is keeping secrets from me and treating me bad. Somebody can get exhausted from that and said, you know what? As opposed to me suffering, if I am not bringing peace to a group of people, why don't I disconnect and just take myself out of the equation? What is your stance on that? Because some people, you don't feel like the person should continue to put themselves out there and be dismantled to bits as opposed to disconnecting. But people do disconnect and find a lot of peace. So as a communicator, what is your input on that?
So this is the classic case in which you are in a toxic relationship, and you think that the best action that you can take is to get out. You have tried everything that you could, and nothing worked. And I'm not opposed to this. I don't think that communication will fix all the relationships. I believe that communication can fix all families as long as every single member is willing to commit to the process. But it depends on the situation. It depends on the situation. It's a very delicate situation that you need to evaluate. So in the case of my work, the work that I do with families, the most important thing is that everybody should be on board. Everybody should be on board to be open to change the way that they communicate, to change the way that they see things. And if they are willing to try, these methods, they really, really work. They really, really work. On the other end, if you would take solo sessions with me, which is something that I don't do, but I could do on request. If someone would take a solo session and they would make, amazing improvements, they would implement all these tips that I've told you about. They would start being compassionate to people rather than being angry at them. At the end of the day, communication is about cooperating. So as there is not one person, only one person in a marriage, there is never one person in a family, one person in a conversation. There are always two or more people. So the point is that the commitment must come from both parties. I truly believe that if both parties are committed to make the change and they listen to what I have to tell them and they try to implement all these things, you are not going to come to a situation in which you are exhausted. Because as you said before, if you want to bring peace to the family, but you feel insulted or attacked by other people, and these people don't want to change, they don't want to initiate all the changes that we have been talking about, then it's a whole other story. It's a whole other story. If you have tried to communicate with them, if you have tried to bring them close to you, it's really important to also respect yourself and to establish healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries is a whole other topic that we often talk about in families, because as you can imagine, in a very disconnected family, in very unhealthy families, also boundaries are not very healthy. So the most important thing that you should always do is to take care of your mental health first. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of other people. Right? It's like when you are on an airplane and the airplane is falling down, you want to take the oxygen mask first before being able to help other people with their oxygen mask. So in order to save other people, you need to save yourself first. So yes. I really do encourage people, if you feel like you're in a toxic relationship and you are burnt out from it, take a step back, establish healthy boundaries, heal from that. And when you are good, then we can talk about how do we approach this difficult family member? How do we find a strategy to get around that? But I'm honestly a big fan of, in order to save other people, you need to save yourself first. This is extremely important.
I agree. Culturally or humanity makes you forget yourself and focus on other people, and it depletes us. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So self-care, when you hear self-care, that is part of it. Take care of yourself first. Be in yourself. Feel yourself. How am I feeling in this moment? Do I like this feeling? Is it exhausting? Is it depleting? Is it giving me a headache? Feel out yourself first before you fix other things. Fix the within. We talked about Edoardo. We talked about getting a neutral party to facilitate a conversation. And most importantly, I think a neutral party, like you did mention it as well, a neutral party within the family. And what if there are no neutral parties? Because what I see is that some people feel like by being quiet and watching toxic communication go on without saying something valuable, right? Just saying words and using words because words exist does not make what you're saying valuable. Saying something valuable in that time to either mitigate that conversation or like, okay, can we discuss this a little further? Okay, what really is going on? Can I call you to talk to you? And actually addressing the problem. How important is that as opposed to being a fly on the wall and playing games behind? My philosophy in life is that if you cannot either caution me publicly or support me publicly, right? When something happens, don't do the backward, oh, hi, how are you? Like, don't do that. That irritates me as a person. How important is that quote unquote neutral stance? How important or detrimental, I guess that's my question, is that neutral stance that, people take sometimes, in a family, just not to ruffle the feather of the person they cannot correct, only to come behind to call and say, well, I did not agree with it. If you did not agree with it, why didn't you say something? Right? How detrimental is that process? Because I think people feel like they're keeping the peace by not speaking up, but instead doing that backward conversation where you're segmenting conversation with different people and giving your opinion when you could have given your opinion in the open.
Absolutely. It's all about transparency. Transparency is the most important thing in family. And usually you get to see so many problems when people say things behind someone's back. So this is absolutely a no-no. And this is why we get together and we have these conversations all together and we try to say what we would say behind someone's back in the open. And the point is, again, there are a lot of fears related to speaking up. There are a lot of challenges that these people are facing. They might not feel supported by a particular family member and they might feel more supported by another one. So that's why they just talk with that person about problems and then other people find out through other people. So transparency is the key in family. You don't want to talk badly about someone else and that someone else finding out about it from someone that is not you. And this takes a lot of courage. And the point is that you need to be able to create a safe environment. All these talks behind your back, they happen because your family does not feel safe. In your relationship, there is not enough safety. to talk about all these problems. So you want to have transparency, and in order to get transparency, you need to get to safety first. Now, I understand that it's never good, it's never pleasant when you hear someone talking behind your back. So you want to be able to overcome this unpleasantness. And the way that you do it is that you need to exercise, your muscle of compassion. You need to learn how not to take things personally. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult in families and in relationships because we think that it's all about us. So it's all about me. It's all about what I do, what I don't do. And so we take things extremely personally. And, coming from a very warm country, I come from Italy. I come from a place where we take things personally, on a whole other level. I live here in Switzerland, in the Swiss-German area of it. And, here no one takes anything personally. And it's, a completely new world. Yeah. But we needed to learn not to take things personally. We needed to be compassionate towards each other and be like, okay, this person is talking behind my back. Okay, let's not be angry at this person, but let's understand that this person doesn't feel safe enough to talk with me about this. Let's see the vulnerability of the person who is doing this. Let's see the issues that have brought this person to behave this way. And this is something that I usually never talk about religion, but this time it could be very good. It's talked about in so many religions in different ways, but take the example of Jesus when he has been sentenced to die. Even if everybody is doing something wrong to him, even if they are condemning him to die, he says, forgive them, Father, because they don't know what they are doing. So you want to have that kind of compassion towards your family members. Stop taking things personal. Stop thinking that it's all about you, and start seeing their vulnerabilities, their own challenges, their own suffering. Because in the end, it's because of their own problems that they are behaving in this way. Also, and this is very empowering, start taking responsibility. Instead of thinking this person is doing something wrong to me, the first step is be compassionate. Be like, this person doesn't feel safe talking with me. The second step is, in which way did I contribute to this situation? Am I making this person feeling not safe to talk to me? And this is something very, very mature that I try to teach to all my clients. Is something very, very advanced. To take responsibility for the things that you unintentionally did to someone else. And when you approach the conversation with this person, with this kind of a maturity, by taking responsibility for everything that you do, and you say something like, look, I know that you said this and that to this person about me. And of course, I don't feel the best about it, but I would like to understand what I did that made you say these things, not to me directly. And you go back to approaching conversation with a positive intention, with the right flag. You create a safe environment, and the person in front of you doesn't feel attacked. The person in front of you feels like, I can really talk to this person. And when, most often than not, when you take responsibility for your own words, for your own actions, when you show this degree of maturity, the person in front of you is extremely likely to do the same to you. So in a way, you want to behave in a way that you are attracting what you are sending out. So if you start being mature, if you start to take responsibility, the person with whom you are having the conversation is probably going to do the same.
Yeah, it's very insightful. And it also helps in somebody, discovering themselves and getting to know themselves, right? What have I done? What did I do? How could I have handled, situation differently? And that also comes with discernment. The discernment aspect is to know when a conversation is necessary and when it's malicious. Because if somebody was having a conversation that was malicious, and you give them this grace and this respect to kind of like have a well thought out conversation, do not expect it to not happen again, because it will happen again. That is where the boundary comes in, that you talked about earlier, Eduardo. So recognizing the relationship, recognizing the nature of the relationship, and setting those boundaries are very important. So first, you can only control yourself. You can only control what you can do. You're not responsible for other people. People do things that you don't understand, and that's okay. That is not for you to take it, internalize it, and personalize it, because it's detrimental. So I've learned quite a bit from this conversation. So Eduardo, usually as we wrap up our conversation, I usually ask my guests to leave our listening audience with a few golden nuggets. You've left us like 2 bags of golden nuggets already, so thank you. One or two things that you really want our listening audience to take from this conversation when it comes to interpersonal relationship, human relationship, and communication, whether it's within friends. We know most of the strongest bonds are within friends, family members, relationships, significant others, or even in parenting.
Well, the first most important thing that I wanted to say is that you can do much more than you can imagine. You can do so much more than you can imagine. We always think that people and situations are set in stone. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but where I grew up, I heard this all the times. Don't try to change your parents or adult people, because as soon as someone is an adult, they cannot change anymore. That's not true. Don't lose the hope, because you're just using the wrong strategy, and there is so much more that you can do. You have within you so much power and control over people and situations. You just need to discover it. And as we talked about in this podcast, there are so many tips and tricks, so many methodologies that seem so counterintuitive to what we should do, but that actually work. So do not give up thinking that you have tried everything and you need to walk away. Ask for help. Ask for help to people who know how to deal with these situations. Try to re-listen to this podcast, and if you don't want to work with me right away, try to implement these suggestions into your everyday life. This is the most important thing that I want to say to families and to relationships. There is so much more than you can do with communication. There is so much more that you can learn from one another. You can really move mountains with the right approach to communications. And I saw that with my own family. We didn't go on vacation for more than 10 years together. And last year we went on a beautiful family trip to Paris, and it was amazing. And I see that with all the people that I work with, there is a lot of skepticism, a lot of disillusion, and I totally get it. You're exhausted, you are burnt out. Just telling you, you have used the wrong strategy all life long. It's just about that. We don't learn communication in school. Our parents, of course, didn't teach us communication. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation. but there is hope. You have lots of power. And if you are afraid of the whole process, I understand that. This is why I do what I do. Give it a try with me. I offer you a pay only when satisfied policy, because I realize that there are so many fears and so many obstacles into taking the first step to do this. So I'm very comfortable with this, and I'm very confident that it's going to work for you. So that's why I'm willing to offer you 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 sessions. And if you're not getting any benefit from it, you don't have to pay anything. Also, because if you're not happy, I'm not happy. So give it a try. You have all the tools, you have all the knowledge now, and you have all the support. You just need to believe that a change can happen, and trust me, it will.
That's amazing. That's an amazing offer. And Edoardo, where can people find you? Do you have a website, social handles?
Absolutely. You can find me on my website, edoardoguidali.com. I know the name is not so easy to remember, so you will find it in the link in the description of this podcast. You can also follow me on my social medias. I'm on Instagram and TikTok.
All right. So we're going to link all of that in the show notes, the website, the Instagram, and the TikTok. Relationships are hard. Relationships all over, not just within families. Sometimes it takes taking a step back, breathing, and coming back to it. Sometimes it requires taking a big step back, but you want to take a step back in a healthy way. Even if you want to revisit and work through it, you want to do that in also a healthy way that is healthy for you and is healthy for the other people involved or person involved. So it doesn't hurt to learn something. And with an offer like that, you pay when you're satisfied, is a no-brainer. So research, look into Edoardo, follow him on the social media handles, and see what you can learn. Ask questions if you have to. He's open. And don't go at it alone. If you need help, you need help. We all need help. And I don't know where in humanity we got this thing that asking for help is weakness is the biggest strength ever. So ask for help.
Absolutely.
Connect with people that can help you. And yes, you can attain that healthy relationship and healthy communication. And even if it doesn't work for the one relationship, you can apply it to your future relationships, right? And be a much better person. So thank you, Edoardo. It was such a great conversation we had today. I learned quite a bit from you, and I really appreciate you making your time to be here. I'm very grateful.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having me. It was a lovely conversation.
Thank you. I had fun as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Let us know what you think about this conversation. All right. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Avik Beck's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.